And what a tactic Antipov just uncorked in his game. Bishop to d4. Tanya, this is sick. I'm just going to show this Kramnik.
Look at
the position
Vlad.
is double-edged. Boom, boom. If you take it, it's simple. C takes d4. Black is going to lose an exchange and very likely the game. It's not over, though. Knight f5, you got to try. I don't think Kramnik's surviving this, though.
Yes, and on the camera, it looked like he couldn't believe what he's just walked into. Or he was having an issue. I'm not really sure what happened, but bishop to d4, really a beautiful spot there, as you pointed out. Absolute tactical awareness there. Wins an exchange. And Kramnik from a great position. I don't even see him defending this. Those three pawns in the center look really pretty and look really strong, but they're going to just end up falling one by one. You can start targeting it, and he does it with his queen to f3. The queen can also march over to h5, looking at those light squares.
But 3 seconds for Antipov, and Kramnik suddenly up on time. Antipov trying to hunt for gold with his queen. I mean, this is going to be incredibly hard to hold for Vladamir here. Antipov is so good in time scrambles. Doesn't trade queens. Correct decision, Tanya. You called it.
D5.
He is poking and prodding and provoking weaknesses. In e3 by Kramnik, seeking some counterplay against White's king. Hold your horses here, literally. That knight on e3. Queen c5, maybe. Still some precision required.
He sidesteps any threats of a discovered check.
King g6. And maybe just trade queens if you're Antipov. Go queen c6 check. Okay, bishop e8 going for mate.
f7 is a big threat. The queen and the bishop are combining against the black king, but Vladimir Kramnik with his own bishop and knight.
Oh!
But g2 is hanging. Can you pick it up? Bishop
queen
takes pawn
g2.
comes with
Queen takes g2.
Oh, it's not hanging. And did that just happen?
It did.
Oh my goodness. The knight was pinned. I missed it. Kramnik missed it.
What knight, Tanya? Bishop g6, and now the knight is gone as well, and the wheels have come off. Mikhail Antipov, what composure toward the end of this game. To find that tactic and convert flawlessly. He did that against Eric Geisy yesterday. So impressive.
And Kramnik is not happy. I have a feeling it's not just to do with the result of the game. We will keep everyone updated with what is happening there. Daniel, more drama?
Well, I'm going to hold my tongue for now. I mean, obviously, we want to be fair and objective, but I don't know why it always appears that only one person has an issue with losing their game consistently.
Something's definitely going on, and we will keep everyone up. Antipov, he's got so much piece activity that d3 pawn can be picked up as well. I think you have to jump in with a check because bishop takes d3 is a threat on the board. The e2 pawn is pinned. Instead of a check, he counterpins that black rook on c3.
Apparently not the best move. Rook to b7 was a smoother conversion. Kramnik is winning here. He's up a pawn. But this is not an easy conversion at all, Tanya, because as you pointed out very correctly, I mean, Antipov's piece is very at bishop takes d3 is a threat. I don't know about this.
A lot of pawns are hanging on the board. You're pointing at d3, a4, also on the fire right now. That extra pawn isn't going to last for too long for Vladimir.
Yep, and bishop takes a4. Can you grab this pawn? Probably not, because that allows the white rook to move up to c7. And another big problem is that this e2 pawn can be very nicely protected with bishop f3 whenever necessary. So black just doesn't have any targets to grab onto. The pieces look good, but they're just kind of stuck there with nothing to attack. I think this is winning for Kramnik if he can avoid any blunders here. He should be able to force an Armageddon.
3 minutes on the clock, so having those extra seconds as well to find the right way forward. And of course, Kramnik's technique is second to none. He just has to make sure he keeps his clock under check, keeps his nerves as well. Bishop takes pawn, rook c7 does win the pawn back for him. For Antipov, if he gets the draw in, he advances through.
Good move. E6, only move, I think, to keep some chances alive, covering the d5 square. Forcing Kramnik to demonstrate exactly how he's actually going to win this, because rook d7 is bad. Then black's rook can capture on a4, Tanya. So it isn't easy. And Kramnik, I think, will probably start expanding on the king side here. just, a good thing to do in the end game as you wait for your opponent to put their cards on the table.
And the other idea to defend the a4 pawn with driving your bishop to c6, yes, you slide it all the way there, but then that means that black can capture on a4 multiple times. And how are we evaluating that positions once the bishops are off the board? Oh, we might see this being
Look
played
at that
out.
timing. The commentator calls it right at the moment. He plays a bishop, and yeah, bishop takes a4. Apparently not what the doctor ordered here for Antipov, but I'm honestly not sure why that's a bad move. Is there a bishop a4? I think white simply trades and then slides both rooks up to the 7th. Piggy's on the 7th. And I think it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. I just think black is losing and probably has to defend like a computer here to keep any chances alive. I'm not seeing a move for Antipov, and he's under a minute. He goes a5. Okay. Trying to advance this pawn as far as it can go and, maybe take on a4, and maybe he can try to get Kramnik into time pressure, right? If Vladamir was under a minute, okay, I think there would be more practical chances.
That a4 pawn has "I'm about to fall off any second" written all over it. But the problem is that the white rook jumps onto c7 and the black rooks are just so badly placed on the a file that they can't come to defense of that f7 pawn.
Yep. Mikhail under a minute himself. He's down to 40 seconds. Maybe rook c3. Maybe he can go h5 and try to preempt white from going g4. But that's not even the big problem. White's next move can just go bishop b5. I mean, there's a million ways that white can improve his position.
Rook a7 coming in, or targeting the a5 pawn as well.
Absolutely. This is completely lost, but, we've seen crazier things happen. And Fedoseev, congrats to him. He draws Matlikov confidently in the second game and advances Levon Aronian as well. So this one will be our only Armageddon if Kramnik can avoid a last-second slip-up.
And once again, we've got this evaluation bar that, the eval bar, I like to call it the evil bar because it makes us feel like this position is so simple. It's an easy play out. It's trivial. But it's really not. For Antipov playing under 15 seconds, he has no idea how much better he is. Of course, he realizes that this is, for Kramnik, how much better he is. He knows that this should be, well, now probably he just knows exactly how much better this is. Because f7 falls, e6 falls, the house falls, everything collapses.
That is a complete crusher. Bishop. Actually, that was the only move you see, as you correctly point out, which wins the game cleanly.
Round 2, while Kramnik will get relegated to Division 2, and we're off. This is the Armageddon. Daniel, what's the hack back here? How do you actually keep the game going and create your chances as white?
I think they're repeating their opening from the second victory, the second game of their mini match. And I want to remind everybody there's no increment here, which is not relevant yet, but it will be very relevant when they get low on time. It can be hard for players to adjust, particularly those who are used to playing increment only formats. So Antipov wants nothing more than to get this into any kind of a time scramble. But right now, the position is very closed up. This is sort of a reverse Benoni structure, Tanya, which tells us that one of white's main ideas is to try to correctly time the move e2, e3. But you also don't want to rush that move because after the pawns are traded, the d3 pawn will become very weak. So Kramnik actually could play kind of a closed center cagey style, knight bd2, and then maybe a4, maybe get the knight around to b3 and start applying queenside pressure even as black has driven this wedge into the center. I have a hard time kind of grasping this position, but it feels like maybe white has a tiny pull here.
You pointed out some really nice ideas for Vlad. On the other hand, playing the structure with black, you've got two plans, right? You could either start with the move a6, targeting the b5 pawn, which will be met by a4 and just keep the tension on the board, and it's happening. And I think the second idea, which will appear on the board, is try to get that e pawn moving up. You really want that on e5. It needs to be defended. I was about to suggest rook e8 or queen c7, but here's another idea that Antipov has, which is to get rid of the feisty bishop on g2, the German glory in white's position. Bishop h3 was a threat. Kramnik sidesteps with the rook so that he can sidestep with the bishop on the next move, now that the rook on f1 is an attack, because that light squared bishop needs to be kept for white. That is the absolute crowning crowning
Crown
glory
jewel,
in
crowning
whites.
glory.
Crown
Yeah,
jewel
I
is the
went through the
word.
same process
Crowning
of, ooh, it
jewel
looks
is
like
what I was looking for. Thank you, Daniel.
Definitely you want to keep this light squared bishop. At the same time, now black's bishop is a bit of a thorn in white's side. It's not the biggest, problem in the world, but it does curtail white's mobility to a degree on the king side, and it gives black the
Mm.
preconditions for some tactical ideas. Let's wait for the center to open up, which, guess what? It just opened up. There's ideas like knight h5, knight f4 hanging in the air, but definitely Kramnik now firmly in the driver's seat. And one of my biggest worries for Antipov is this knight on a5. It's completely out of commission, and when the position is closed, okay, you don't really need every single piece, to be all hands on deck, but here you kind of do. That knight has no clear way to re-enter society. If you play the move e6, then the knight on f6 becomes very loose. White has this bishop c3, queen b2 idea. Let me tell you, Antipov is in trouble, and he has to find a tactical way to resolve his problems. Maybe he's putting all of his eggs in the knight g4 basket. Maybe he's just going to sacrifice the e7 pawn. But if he does that, then he's doing it out of desperation, not because his position is good. His position is really bad.
It's also such an inner battle for Antipov, right? He wins the first game, needs only a draw to wrap up the match, and then everything goes south in that one, and you end up losing it, giving the momentum to your opponent. And now for Vladimir Kramnik, he's back in the match. Antipov has to keep it together. It's not an easy position. It's an imbalanced position. There's no symmetry at all. We see instead of sacrificing a pawn, he does defend it. And you can see the tension on Antipov right now. On the camera, I'm looking at him. Daniel, he looks very fidgety.
Yeah.
Kramnik's a picture of calmness.
Yeah, I mean, Kramnik's the more experienced Armageddon player, and so far he's been playing very quickly. Obviously, much has been made of, time scrambles and Kramnik, and it's true, things can go wild in that situation. But in terms of his actual tempo of play, he plays pretty fast. I mean, in rapid formats, he often doesn't allow himself to get into time pressure, and it can be a hard kind of style to face. Right now, he's got 8 minutes on the clock. He spent less than 2 minutes of his allotted time. He gives a check on c3. We see some trades, which does relieve the pressure a little bit. But now there's a different kind of pressure. Okay, let's say the king moves back to g8. Antipov has everything under control for the time being. He's protected his pawn on e7. But Tanya, it feels so precarious, and it feels like black's position is one little weakness away from just crumbling.
Yes, but there is already a weakness in white's position as well, right? That d3 pawn that you always have to watch out for. You were pointing out the idea of that bishop on h1 landing on d5. It's a beautiful square, but it's not exactly stable there because the e pawn can move one step ahead, attacking that bishop. So Antipov has got his own counterplay that he needs to build against the only weakness that I can spot in Vladimir's position here. White's camp. D3, you're pointing out with your arrows, rook d7, bishop f5. I love it. But I think the problem piece here has got to be that knight on a5. You don't really have a way home. Knight to b7 runs into rook into pawn. That rook gets disconnected. So it also makes sense to first put your rook on that central file the moment you get a chance. By the way, another piece trade offered there by Vlad. And that surprises me because the more pieces that get traded off, it feels as if the more pressure gets released for black.
But I think that his point is he's basically saying, listen, I'm going to trade all the other pieces except the knight on a5. He's just going to leave black with this piece, which is totally out of commission. And that makes sense. Now, it's a risky strategy because you might end up trading too many pieces, Tanya, as you're saying. And Antipov actually is the one who declines the bishop trade. Now, he's kind of forcing Kramnik to find that next that next way to make progress. Kramnik drops back to g2. Okay. Is that a repetition? Where did that bishop come from? No, it came from h1. So he re-fianchettos, improving his position incrementally. And again, let's not forget, there is no increment on the clock. And the one who might suffer from that actually turns out to be Antipov, whose time deficit has not shrunk since the start of the game. I mean, he is just getting pushed off the board in vintage Kramnik style. This is going to be a very, very difficult defensive task. He goes rook d7. Now we're going to see white's knight get into the game. There's also this juicy outpost on c6. That is the only virtue of the knight on a5. At least it protects the c6 square, but it's very small consolation. Black's position is borderline technically lost.
The last few moves has just ended up that bishop for Antipov being on c8, not being able to come to f5 in time to put more pressure on d3. Meanwhile, it just appears as if Kramnik has outmaneuvered his opponent. His own bishop, better placed on g2. The knight eyeing that e5 square, not only an attacking square hinting at c6, but also a key defender for that d3 pawn. You never can really kick it out without weakening your king side massively. Things looking really good. The knight on a5, still out of the game. Essentially, white has an extra piece. At some point, are you expecting Vladimir Kramnik to channel his inner AlphaZero and go h4, h5?
Great call. I think h4 is on the radar. I think he has to calculate rook takes c7. And I think this is what Antipov is trying to get him to go tactical, to try to cash in his chips and convert the extra point, the point with the tactical sequence, and then miscalculate somewhere. So rook takes c7, things get very complicated, and this is Black's best chance. I don't think Kramnik is going to do that. I think he is probably deciding, okay, do I want to go with a plan like h4, h5? Do I want to centralize my knight? Maybe he is calculating rook takes c7 and trying to make it work, and he plays it. And now I'm starting to hold my breath because now the margins become very thin. And I think white preserves a big attack here, but this is what Antipov wants. He wants wide open tactical battle because this increases the chances of a blunder. But forget all of that, Tanya. How do you defend this pawn? Do you bring your king up to g7? And that's a very scary move to make, but you might have to.
The only thing more scary than that is to play g5 and walk into some sacrifice with knight takes pawn, pawn takes knight, queen takes pawn. I don't know if it works or not, but just looking at it is absolutely terrifying. Which means that perhaps you need to defend that h-pawn with your king, because pushing the pawn to h5 would just mean queen h6, knight g5, queen h7, checkmate in 3, game over.
Exactly. But he's burning so much time trying to force himself through clenched teeth to make these incredibly ugly moves. You got to just go king h7. Whatever fate awaits you after that move, there is no alternative. You literally, I think, get made. Maybe he is thinking about g5, knight takes g5, and then obviously not taking the knight, but thinking of some way to make it tactical. He goes bishop g4. Okay. I actually think that's a really interesting resource. Hitting the knight. And apparently the best move for Kramnik, not an easy move to make yourself play. You got to go knight e5, trade the rooks tactically, and then route the knight around to d5, Tanya. But very ingenious resource here by Antipov, who's not going down to that a fight.
Not on my radar either. Just looking at ideas of queen takes pawn, how to counter a threat. But often a threat can be countered with a counter threat. And bishop g4 does exactly that. Sometimes the best way to defend in a chaotic position, in a difficult position, is to go on the offense. Now, knight e5 also forces Kramnik to take some time to burn the clock. And it's good that he's doing it because it is a critical moment. You said it's a difficult move to find, but perhaps by process of elimination, you do arrive to it because the knight on f3 is hanging and you have to find a way to defend it. You're also looking at ideas of a trade on f3 and the d4 square being weak. I think Kramnik's going to find this move, which is being highlighted in blue, which means it's the computer's top choice, knight to e5, and it's on the board. He does it.
Great call there. As you said, queen h6, bishop f3. And if Antipov pulls off a comeback here, I think bishop g4 will have a large part to play in that. I didn't see that move at all, but I think this is exactly what he needs to do. Make Kramnik go through these calculations and bring that time deficit closer and closer to a time scramble. Even if you end up in a lost endgame, but you can go for the flag. That is one of the most legitimate strategies here for Antipov. As Kramnik actually takes the bishop.
Wow.
What a bold decision, and apparently the wrong decision. He's going for checkmate. Now, Tanya, I understand what Kramnik is trying to do here. That knight on g4 is aiming for either f6 or h6, but if the mate doesn't succeed, then Antipov is up in exchange. So this is a very risky choice. And apparently, after queen to d6, the eval bar is showing zeros. It's calling Kramnik's bluff here, but can Antipov figure this out with 2 minutes on his clock and no increment?
Incredibly tough. It is so much to do with the clock as well, as you very rightly reminded everyone right now that there is no increment. How do you defend this position? It's the kind of position that white can play on forever. It's so much compensation. Yes, he might have given a big portion of his advantage, But the clock still remains, and problems around the king have to be answered.
Oh,
And
what a
Antipov
move!
continues to do it.
What a move!
He's not defending. He just goes on the offense every single move.
And Kramnik actually goes into the endgame. What he just did makes zero sense. He could have taken Antipov's rook and just had a huge advantage. Instead, he just trades queens down in exchange. This is wild by Vladimir Kramnik. He's trying to go knight e5, but this doesn't work. And Antipov is even more nervous now that he senses he can just win this game. I mean, he's not even playing for a draw. If this wasn't an Armageddon, Black is now actually better. This is absolutely wild. Kramnik is losing his composure here with plenty of time on the clock. And
Bishop
White is
G4,
losing. What is going on here?
Two
Knight D3 is
absolutely
coming.
brilliant moves.
Incredible resource, but Kramnik trading queens there was mind-boggling. Wow.
It's all about the clock now.
Wow.
Daniel,
exactly.
Kramnik has to try to flag. That's his only
Never
hope.
thought I'd hear those words. Kramnik is trying to flag someone.
What does he do right now? He's down an exchange. Yes, you've got these ideas against that f7 pawn, but the moment your knight joins the attack, the black king can step up to f6, hitting the rook, hitting that knight on e5. You can't afford to trade your rooks. How do you even keep the game going? And the more time he takes, the more confident Antipov gets about his chances. The moves are so much easier for black to make. One more move, knight d3 coming in. I think knight b3 has to be one of the most beautiful moves I've seen in an Armageddon.
That's an incredible resource. It rattled Kramnik, and Antipov did exactly what he wanted to do. He made it very tactical, very concrete. Kramnik lost his composure, and now Antipov needs to keep his composure. King f6 here is a very important move to play. King f6, basically forking the rook and the knight, forcing Kramnik into contorting himself just to keep his pieces protected. Then Antipov's knight evacuates to d3, and he just starts chopping off White's pawns. Black is totally winning, and Tanya, Antipov is a 3,000 rated chess.com blitz player. 90 seconds for him is plenty of time. He is going to take this game, I think, barring some sort of a crazy blunder on his part. But Kramnik's still trying. King f3, heads up move. Don't take with the rook because of the same type of resource that we just saw Black play. And he just goes for the trade. Excellent play by Antipov, who only needs a draw.
And you can't really avoid it because there's another idea. Knight takes knight. The rook on e7 is hanging. So you do end up losing that key piece, the bishop on d5. Well, not losing, but trading. And that's bad news. The clocks are also leveling out. Now, Kramnik touching the 2-minute mark. Knight takes bishop is a move that you can't avoid.
Rook e8 now, or c4. I mean, 1 minute seems like I think with 30 seconds, realistically, you should be able to win this.
I like when I say win, cut off the white king.
In the broadest sense, Tanya, the fact that you only need a draw here is such a relief. You can force perpetual the second you see it. Kramnik might just resign here. What a turnaround. I'm still kind of processing how this position appeared on the board.
Kramnik had played a flawless game until that point. He did everything right. He was completely dominating the position, but then going in for these complications, which actually Antipov set up for Kramnik, going for bishop g4, knight e5 ideas, hitting that chaos button at the right time, tempting Kramnik into these positions. A position where both players have the opportunity to go wrong, and this time it feels like it was Vladimir Kramnik ending up in this endgame, down material. Well, right now he is threatening the f7 pawn. Rook to e7 comes to mind, but you have to watch out for some ideas. Rook d6 check, pick up that pawn on b6, you lose the d5 pawn. It just feels like this is going badly for White. And look at the clocks as well now, Daniel.
Antipov's up on time, and that means night-night, literally. I'm not talking about the knight on d8. This is the match for Antipov. And, even before knight b3, remember when he tempted Kramnik into taking on e7? That's really what initiated the tactical complexity. Right before that, it was positional domination, which is the worst kind to be facing. Antipov turned it into more tactical domination, but at least the center was open. There were more choices for Kramnik to make. And that's what kind of led up to that shocking decision to take on g4 and the decision to trade queens. But all credit to Antipov. He keeps his composure. He was so nervous to start this game, but somehow finds it in himself to pull through.
Has Kramnik just
And
turned
there
off
goes
his
Kramnik.
camera?
Yep.
And is he just going to let his time run out?
I believe so.
We're seeing that happen right now. He doesn't resign, just leaves.
And obviously, maybe, we should allow for the possibility that he disconnected, but I think that is unlikely. I think he's turned his cam back on. I don't know exactly what's
back.
happening.